There was a moment during the consistory when general attention seemed to be directed elsewhere. The media spotlight was on surface dynamics, geopolitical balances, and peripheral maneuvers. Yet, far from the front pages, something far more significant happened. A brief, seemingly ordinary intervention brought to light a theological line that, given the role of its speaker, cannot be dismissed as mere personal opinion. The speaker was Victor Manuel Fernandez, prefect of the dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. He was not just any bishop, not a marginal theologian, but the head of the body that, by definition, is charged with safeguarding, defending, and promoting the integrity of the Catholic faith. It is from this position that his words take on a different, almost structural, specific weight. Fernandez reportedly urged bishops and cardinals not to become obsessed with doctrine and moral norms, instead urging them to focus ecclesial action on what he calls the heart of the evangelical message. A phrase that, taken in isolation, might even seem reassuring. But when placed in context, and especially when uttered by those responsible for doctrine, it raises questions that are anything but trivial. The crux of the matter isn't the importance of proclaiming the gospel, which no one in the Catholic tradition has ever questioned. The critical point lies in the implicit contradiction that emerges from the discourse. On the one hand, the proclamation; on the other, doctrine and norms presented as a risk, a burden, almost a deviation from the Church's primary mission. It is here that the tension becomes evident. In the language used by the prefect, doctrine appears not as the foundation that makes the message intelligible, but as something that can turn into an obsession. A strong, non-neutral word, it suggests excess, rigidity, fixation. Not a simple call for balance, but a shift in perspective. In this framework, the message is presented as a self-sufficient reality, while doctrine seems reduced to an accessory, subordinate, even potentially harmful element. Fernandez recalled the concept of the hierarchy of truths, an authentic theological principle recognized by the Church, but which in recent practice has often become an ambiguous tool. In its classical formulation, the order of truths serves to demonstrate the internal coherence of the deposit of faith, not to relativize what is inconvenient or culturally unpopular. Yet, in the way it is evoked today, this principle risks turning into a selective filter. Some truths are declared central, others relegated to a secondary, contingent, negotiable level. The problem isn't theoretical, it's practical. When it's stated that not all truths carry equal weight, the inevitable question is, who decides which can be set aside? And above all, on what basis? In the recent history of the Church, this approach has produced visible fragmentation. In the name of pastoral care, clear moral teachings have been treated as if they were optional, not formally denied, but emptied in practice. And it is here that the paradox of Fernandez's appointment emerges forcefully. The prefect of the Doctrine of the Faith is not called to invent new pastoral languages, but to ensure the continuity of the apostolic faith. When, from that position, one is urged not to insist on doctrine and norms, the tension is not a side effect, it is the very heart of the matter. In the speech attributed to the prefect, the announcement is described as an encounter, an experience, a primary proclamation that should precede all else. But in the Catholic tradition, the encounter with Christ has never been separated from revealed truth. There is no pure proclamation, detached from doctrinal content. The apostolic kerygma was not a generic affirmation of love, but included a call to conversion, obedience to the commandments, and adherence to a concrete faith, transmitted and preserved. Separating proclamation and doctrine effectively means transforming the former into an emotional, fluid, and adaptable experience. A formless proclamation, which can be shaped according to the cultural context and current sensibilities. It's a vision that may appear effective in terms of communication, but it risks emptying the very content of the gospel. It is no coincidence that this type of language emerges in continuity with an ecclesial period already marked by controversial documents and practices. Without forcing connections, it is undeniable that the invitation not to obsess with doctrine and norms is part of a trend that has already produced concrete effects. Divergent practices between dioceses, conflicting interpretations of morality, growing disorientation among the faithful. In many local communities, what is taught or tolerated depends less and less on a shared reference and more on the sensitivity of the individual pastor. The result is a church that appears fragmented, where the same faith takes on different contours depending on the location, not because of legitimate enculturation, but because of the lack of a shared vision. Fernandez's speech, read from this perspective, does not appear as an isolated episode, but as a further piece of a broader transformation. A transformation in which doctrine is perceived as a problem to be managed, not a treasure to be safeguarded, where moral norms are seen as obstacles to mission, not as a concrete expression of the truth of the gospel. Furthermore, the silence surrounding these claims is striking. No major denials, no official clarifications, no open debate in institutional channels. A silence that, in ecclesiastical circles, often indicates not irrelevance, but embarrassment or tacit approval. Words pass, but the direction remains. The greatest risk is not immediate controversy, but habituation. When it's repeated that we shouldn't overemphasize doctrine and norms, the message is clear. What has defined Catholic identity for centuries can be downplayed in the name of supposed pastoral effectiveness. But a church that renounces doctrinal clarity doesn't become more missionary, it simply becomes more indistinct. Ultimately, the question raised by Fernandez's words does not concern him personally, but the model of the church they presuppose. A church where proclamation is separated from the truth it proclaims, where encounter precedes and sometimes replaces conversion, where doctrine is no longer the criterion, but a variable to be managed. These are words that point the way, and when they are spoken by the prefect of the doctrine of the faith, that direction cannot be ignored. The resulting tension is not the result of controversy, but the logical consequence of a paradigm shift that continues to question, disturb, and divide the Catholic world. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment, Amen. God bless you.